Hello again, everyone. This is the Fawn Pod. It's friends occasionally not disagreeing. This is Cody. I'm back again here with Dan and Justin. We're checking out another MCU property in this episode, Ironheart, which just recently wrapped up on Disney Plus. We'll get into our thoughts about that and Justin's complaints about that in just a second. Before we get to that, let's give these guys a chance to plug anything they've been up to as of recently. Justin, why don't you go first today? What have you been up to?
Sure. Well, speaking
Hold
of
on, I
complaint,
can't see you. Can you? You're
yeah.
my must be my glasses. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, funny you should mention that.
Bah!
I've had quite the weekend. We're recording this like shortly after the 4th of July, and I'd gone into this whole weekend really not feeling it. I mean, especially this year of all years where it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot worth celebrating. But the fireworks in town where I live, we're going to be on Thursday, the third. I got off of a long day of work, and it's like, fine, let's go see the fireworks. Let's go, send democracy off with a bang. So my wife and I eat dinner. We head down to the harbor where they set off everything. Get there kind of early. So we're looking for a spot, and we find a spot that'll accommodate both of us, like right up along the water, where we can like just sit pretty much right on the edge and all that. And sitting there and we're talking and whatnot. And I take off my glasses to like rub my eyes or something. And as I take them off, they just slip out of my hands. There's a brief moment in like, the old, 80s movie slow motion where it's like, I see them kind of just slowly
I was thinking Christmas
drop.
Story with the lug nuts.
Yeah,
Yes.
only I didn't say fudge. Um, yeah, I see them just dropping. They skid once on the concrete and just disappear 20, 30 feet into the water, below the surface of the water,
Oh
somewhere at
no.
the bottom of Lake Superior. So it's a holiday weekend. My optometrist is closed until Monday, meaning I had the prospect of 3.5 days of not even having anything close to my prescription available to try and get through before I can even attempt to make an appointment to get new glasses. So yeah, I am wearing a pair of I can't even call them cheap cheaters because these things are like $20 now. It's fucking ridiculous. But I can sort of kind of read with them. It's not great, but they'll get me through. Hopefully, get me through the however many days I need to get through at work before I can actually see normally again.
Oh my gosh.
It's pretty bad. After that, I did. That's not even it's the worst part of that day. But then to add insult to injury and perhaps a bit of social commentary on top of it, the fireworks were canceled that night because of some sort of technical difficulty.
Oh,
So just
holy
an
crap.
absolutely craptacular evening. The weekend got a bit better after that, in that nothing else went wrong. But yeah, it's been an interesting couple of days, and I haven't really been able to do a ton because these tire out my eyes after a bit, so I can't
Yeah,
like
yeah.
focus on a whole lot too close up for very long. So uh, hopefully you guys have had a better run of things. Dan, what about you?
Yeah, thankfully I can't report any major negatives. I started watching Bear season four, and I've heard some criticism going into it that it's not as good, but of the couple episodes I've seen, I'd say it's very complimentary to season three, kind of almost like filling in some of the things that are missing in season three. So that seems all right so far. And then obviously watching Ironheart, which we're gonna talk about here in a minute. And then otherwise, it's prepping. My oldest has a big graduation party, so I'm doing all kinds of minor projects, cleaning up stuff. So I'm basically handyman Dan for most of the weekend.
Nice.
Now, without any context, I'm imagining a show called Bear in this day and age is all about that trend a while back of how women always pick the bear. Is that what this show is?
No, but now you're selling me on this other one. That sounds like a great show. This is a series about a like five-star chef who has to go back home to save his family's Italian beef restaurant in Chicago.
That also sounds like it could be cool.
It is like if you're a fan of Chicago, there are some just glorious shots. And I'd say there's a really big twist that happens at this end of season one that dramatically changes the trajectory of the show. So I honestly, it is some of the best acting I've seen in a long time, and it feels really weird to say this. Jamie Lee Curtis is in like maybe an hour and a half of like three, 4 seasons of this show, and it is some of the best acting from her I've ever seen.
Whoa, nice, nice.
So it is a recommend for me.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, not much here. Been playing a couple board games recently. We finished up a campaign, 24 scenarios of My City that the family's been playing through for probably over 2 years, I would say. It took us to get through all 24 of them, but
Wow.
highly recommend that. I've talked about that in the air before, but it's a legacy game for the same crowd, 2 to 4 people. If you have a game group that you can get with, it's fantastic to play through. Kids can play through it as well, so it's really for all ages. They won't do as well, but they'll still have a lot of fun doing what they get, and ways different things will affect them as the game goes on, boards will change, etc. Other than that, really, I guess in my beginning of starting to have a little more free time around here because I finished some of my garden projects, I just got back into a little more wholeheartedly Tears of the Kingdom Zelda. And I had been kind of like poking around, searching for like a shrine here or there, things like that, but I just kind of got back into like finally progressing the story after it's been sitting for like a year for me. So um, it's been another one of the things, and we've kind of talked on similar topics about this on the podcast, but it's like with my life at this age, like a game that is, 200 hours long is just such a prospect of dauntingness to get
Yep.
through to me. So
Yeah.
I kind of did like, I don't know how many hours, 70, I'm guessing maybe a year ago, and then kind of took a big break. And now I'm kind of going back to hopefully finish it off here before summer's over. That's kind of a goal. If I get through it quick enough, I'd like to try to squeeze a couple more games in here as well. So, but we'll see. We will see. Okay, let's jump right into it here today. Then we have Ironheart. Again, this just wrapped up on Disney Plus. I believe we mentioned on another podcast. This is an odd one in that they dropped the whole show just over 2 weeks, or really 8 days apart, if you want to count it that way. 3 episodes one week, 3 episodes the week after that. That's the whole show. It's wrapped with 6 episodes. Talk about if there's a season two towards the end here today, perhaps. But this has been an interesting one now that I'm done with it to read some of the comments and reviews that are out there online because, as we were saying before we got on the air, the review scores for this are really all over the place. As high as like a Rotten Tomato, 86% good, and IGN has it down at a 5 out of 10. I've seen criticisms about some of the particular characters in this show in particular, lots of different types of criticism, which we can talk about also. And probably for us to do this one justice, we're going to have to give some spoilers with this one here as well today. So if you haven't seen this, please go back and wrap it up before you listen to this. It's only 6 episodes. It's fairly short. And if you were like me, quite surprised, the last episode was the shortest episode, which I was kind of surprised by. We turned on that one. So they were in the high 50 minutes, and then they went down to like 39 for the last one. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You know, in relation to spoilers, I'll say this is probably one of the biggest twists of a Marvel property we've had in a while.
Yeah,
Can agree. Yeah.
yeah, probably so. Probably so. Let's start off with some characters and performances here today, and then we'll get into some plots that we enjoyed or maybe had some trouble with. We definitely gotta have a section here where we talk about the ending and the reveal and the post credits, and then probably a little touch here for me on just technology and magic in the show, which is kind of I don't want to say it's a combo we haven't seen in the MCU, but not maybe to this style in the MCU. And then we'll rank this bad boy, or rate it, I should say, and then we'll head into maybe just a real quick plug on what else the MCU has coming out here in 2025 only, because I don't want to go too far down the weeds with the pipelines and everything. But let's get through all these. So this is going to star Riri Williams, aka the titular Ironheart in this. Dominique Thorne, I'm not sure which way to say that, who is featured in Wakanda Forever. And this was like the second Black Panther movie, minus Black Panther. There we go. So that's a whole thing. But she was an interesting character to get a show on. I kind of figured we would see her again at some point in the future. She was a very brusque and sassy character that they brought into the MCU. Like, tonally seemed very different than a lot of the other characters they had bouncing around in that movie. So was curious to see a little bit more from her here. And I don't know for sure. I guess you could kind of view her as being positioned to like I both like and hate when they kind of pigeonhole the MCU characters into like fulfilling an old role that a character had in the MCU. So I guess she's Iron Man, but also it seems a little unfair to keep calling people the new version of somebody else all the time.
Hmm.
So I just
Well,
want to let's just say her, and then I will also throw out there Lyric Ross as Natalie Washington, aka Natalie, which I'm not going to take the ridiculous time to spell out all the letters on, but the AI for her suit. And then I also wanted to throw out there Reagan Aaliyah as Zelma Stanton, who is or becomes Riri's friend and is also a sorceress, magician.
Magical user.
Magical
yeah,
user. So I'm going to pause after those three. I got these split into a couple mini categories here. So of those three, what did you think of performances there or characters from those three?
we didn't see a whole lot of Zelma. I mean, she comes in kind of late into the series. Yeah, introducing someone who is like straight up, a magic user like Doctor Strange, like Agatha, like whatnot. It's nice that they're still trying to acknowledge that side of the MCU because it feels like it just kind of gets forgotten sometimes. She's really open with it though, and I don't quite know how I feel about that. It's just like there's some initial resistance of like, no, no, we don't do that here, and then all of a sudden, boom, just by the end, she's just doing like small things that are clearly bending the rules of reality in front of people, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, I guess it's cool now. Um, Interesting character though. She, was she's clever. She was witty. I liked what we saw of her.
Hmm.
I have like I said, the how flippant she is with displaying her powers is a little questionable at times, but she was all right. I did like Natalie though. She really both of Natalie's, the AI and the real one, but we see more of the AI one. She had more development than I would have expected out of a character like that, and that surprised me, and I enjoyed that. Riri herself is probably the character I'm most conflicted about. Um, but we can talk a little more about that later. But what about you guys?
I thought Lyric Ross, every scene she it was in, like she kind of like stole it. That was the character I want to see more and more of. We'll obviously talk quite a bit about what that character arc kind of like is, I guess we'll talk about. Um, in terms of Reagan being Zelma, that was I agree with Justin. Like it was weird to all of a sudden be so flippant and like it being like heavily mixed into the show. It was great to see that. And I hadn't seen her in the comics, so I went and like read more about that character. And after seeing her performance, I am because at some point the project of the MCU, A Strange Academy, which is basically like Harry Potter school, but for magical MCU characters. That's the comic is where her character was introduced. Now I'm like, well, damn, now I really want to see like a whole bunch of these like wizards trying to figure it out. Like that would be a great thing. So like I really enjoyed maybe that's the only slice we'll get, but like that was great to see. Then getting to Dominique, I think the I think her performance was so nuanced into this character who like I looking back at Wakanda Forever, like this was a little bit in that show or in that movie, but the show really emphasized like she's not a straight up hero. And I think that's like for as much as it seems like she's the new Iron Man, I think kind of like her character and her motivations, it both parallels but then differs from Tony Stark's. And
Mhm.
that like I appreciated the performance in terms of going like this is a different flavor of Tony Stark. Like the same engine, but going a very different direction. And like then I was okay with the performance.
Yeah, I wouldn't add too much to Lara Cross that you guys have said. Zelma's character, something I'll get into later in that last discussion. I saw a lot of criticism from people online is not her performance at all, but just in terms of like how can there be this powerful of like wizards or spell users out there? Like she kind of made Doctor Strange look like a chump, which we can talk about more at the end because he struggles to do all these things, and she's just like pew, 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 different dimension. So that might
Um,
be a problem, not positive.
Speaking of her, I just remembered something from like probably 10 years ago, at least at this point, during I'm sure it's like three iterations of the Marvel Comics universe ago. I do vaguely remember her as being like a protege of Doctor Strange himself. Like somehow ends up kind of she either asks for his help or something, but gets wrapped up with him and ends up sort of becoming his apprentice.
Okay.
In like just a run of Doctor Strange. I don't think I saw her get too much in the way of her own powers in that stretch, but I do remember her being an established character and being kind of interesting even back then. So I just a different introduction of her than we get in the show, but it's interesting to see that they are pulling more obscure characters from the comics in as well. So
Yeah. And the last one here for me on this one, just Riri. I think I think your rating of the show probably is going to go very similar to how you viewed her as a character. I think just overall, because there were times when I was like, what, like we've only seen her as quote unquote a hero, right? And then we start this show off, and she's like, "Well, I'll do a couple jobs," and I'm like,
Couple
"Wait a second,
crimes.
you're a good,
yeah,
you're a hero. What's going on here?"
build suits, do crimes.
Yeah, I guess
Ironheart.
one of the producers said that this was her going down a Breaking Bad path with things like anti-heroes like Walter White or Tony Soprano, and I was like, I don't know about that, but it is interesting because like I think you used the word nuance, but she really is because what motivates her in this show, and I've been kind of struggling with this for a couple days, trying to figure out what her motivation is as a character, I think really is the lens I have to view this show in. And it's very different. Like she's pushing to be the best, or to have the best technology or the best suit or to protect her family, all these other things, whereas other people might be out for like the most money they could make or to have power or to do these other things. And she has drives. They're not the same drives as some of those other characters we've seen in the MCU, but the lengths she will go to achieve those goals is similar to other people we have seen. So that's a really interestingly complex character, I think. Um, I'm still processing how I feel about her as we talk about this episode. So we'll see what the number comes in at the end of. All right. Let's jump to the next chunk of characters here. I'm just going to call this the gang, if you will. So we have Anthony Ramos as Parker Robbins, aka the Hand. He's kind of the boss of this group. We have Manny Montana as John, his cousin and a knife wielder. Sonia Dennis as Clown, a pyrotechnics specialist. Shea Cooley as Slug, the hacker. Which interesting that I didn't hear in the show, but it says online she is from Madripoor, which is a big X-Men location, so that's
Mhm.
interesting. Um, Zoe Tarakis as Jerry Blood, and then also Shakira Barrera as Roz Blood. These are both kind of more hand-to-hand combat, Street Fighter type characters, I guess. So anybody in the gang stand out for you? I mean, the Hood probably somewhat, but
You Madripoor got name dropped a couple times.
did it? Okay, I did
Yeah.
not see that.
Yeah, it was weird to hear a character be like, "Oh, I'm just back in Chicago from because I got kicked out of Madripoor." It's like
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
didn't expect to hear that ever. But I thought Anthony Ramos did a great job as the Hood. Someone that especially throughout the arc, he's not out there to be like, I'm going to do like horrific things. You
Mhm.
find it eventually like his drive, but he's more like, no, I have some goals. I'm going to build this family around me. Like it
Hmm.
brings some of that Fast and Furious like vibe of like, no, we're a team, we're a family, we're working together. Um, a great job of like being charismatic enough that he could build a family, but also driven enough that like, yeah, this guy's gonna go to some extremes to achieve his goals.
Yeah, and by the end of it, you get the impression that he really bit off more than he could chew. which I think was an interesting, reveal as the series went on. Um, but yeah, I the crew took a little while to grow on me. In the end, I ended up liking them, especially with a thematic parallel that develops between the Hood's relationship with them and then Riri's relationship with the people in her life. There is a mirror there, and I
Hmm.
think they serve a thematic purpose that I really enjoy, and I liked that element of them. I think more than I liked a lot of them as characters. But they weren't bad. They like the rest of the show at the beginning started out a bit rough, but I think they did come into their own as time went on.
Yeah, I'd agree. Similarly, they grew on me as they went on. We got to have some scenes with less of them, like one in particular here or there, just kind of where you could focus on who they were and what their personality was like a little bit more. I guess I didn't do shout out to Rampage either, so shout out Rampage also.
Oh, Rampage.
We hardly knew
R.I.P.
Eve, but yeah. Um, yeah, the performance by the gang was adequate, I thought. As far as the Hood himself, Parker. It's another really complex character where I don't know. At times I thought like this guy's kind of a goof, and then other times I was like, well, he's got his motivation as well, and that is something I think people maybe that haven't stuck around with the MCU for a long time, or at least in the recent times here, have seen, which is these villains that seem to have like a more personal drive to what's making them do the things they're doing.
Mm.
Definitely compared to like Red Skull take over America or whatever, take over the world or whatever. It's like some of these are definitely more personal now. Even the villains are more nuanced in their motivation, which I think is great. So,
Yeah.
all right, then we have one more here in this group by himself. I put this guy, Alden Aaron. How do you say this guy's name? Aaron Reich.
Alden
I,
Eric, Han
Emmerich.
Solo.
There we go. Yes.
It's young Han
Yeah,
Solo.
Han Solo. That's what I was gonna say too. This is Joe, aka Ezekiel, aka Zeke Stain. We've come to find out here, who I thought I is this a character from the comics?
It is.
Okay, I enjoyed. I didn't know, so I was enjoying the like slow reveal of who he was in the TV show, and I was like, I bet that guy's going to turn out to be Obadiah's son, and sure enough, he does.
Ah,
So
nice.
yeah, so that was cool. How would you think of performance here?
Initially, I hated this guy because it's just absolutely no spine. Just letting people walk all over him. Just seems like and yet at the same time, he's got all this other stuff that he's got in the background, and none of it seems to mesh until you learn more about him and you realize all of his passivity, all of his non-combatants, his extreme devotion to not get to avoiding confrontation. It's all because he doesn't want to be like his dad.
Mhm.
And once that really starts developing, and then he eventually reaches a turning point. I found that was kind of compelling, in all honesty. Like he's doing his best to just put his family associations behind him, to not live in that shadow, and the world just won't let him. And that is the makings of a good villain.
Yeah.
So I liked his story, his arc, his development.
I loved how they added in that detail about the story of what happened to Obadiah. Like the common people see a very different view than we saw in the
Yeah,
Yeah,
cinematic universe. So I thought that was fascinating. And then did anyone else catch like the complete shade the newscasters threw at him?
the son or
Like
the dad?
the son.
the
They were
sun.
like after he got arrested, they were making some jokes, and one
Mhm.
of the reporters made, I forget exactly what the comment is, but the other reporter was like, "Ooh, that was a good one." I'm like, "Holy crap!"
Right. Yeah, yeah, and which also paints a very damning picture of the news media, which perhaps deservedly so, because they'll just latch onto anything for spectacle and for
Mhm.
ratings,
Yeah.
regardless of journalistic integrity. There's a surprising amount of subtext in this show, considering how it starts. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. All right. Well, there's at least one other character we do need to chat about, but let's save
Yep.
that for a smidge here. let's
Can
get
I do
into go ahead, Dan.
before we do
Or
that? Can I
Justin,
do
yeah.
it? Can I don't have the IMDb up here, but
Yep.
can I do a shout out to the woman who plays Riri's mom
Oh
Oh
yeah.
because
yeah.
she was one of the most human characters in this, and it really added flavor to the story. It added depth. It added like a soul that certain other Marvel projects have not had. I mean, just the sheer amount of care and love she has for her
Hmm.
daughter, despite all the things that Riri's been hiding from her and trying to push her away and all that. The fact that she's still there for her,
Hmm.
and it's unconditional love and acceptance. It's just it was a very human portrayal of family,
Yeah.
and I loved her performance. She honestly was one of my favorite characters in this show.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
awesome.
she was fantastic, especially someone who's got to balance that line of like, well, my kid's a genius and can do all these
Mhm.
things, but my kid's also a moron and keeps doing all these dumb things.
Yeah, just a complexity there that it seemed natural. Just excellent delivery.
She at times she seemed like I don't know, maybe I felt it was the correct way to parent, but as a parent, I was like, I don't know, you let go of that one pretty quickly there, lady. Like be a little more upset about that one for longer, but that's just me. That's Angie White who played Ronnie Williams, P.S.
Yeah.
Um, Also, since we're on the topic of side characters I didn't mention, I also want to throw out a shout out to Harper Anthony, who played Little Landon with his wagon through the series because he was a fun little piece of business
This is
as well.
solid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
and actually, I also I'm naming everybody here, but I also liked I didn't put him on the list either. Matthew Elam, who played Xavier, who is Natalie's
Yeah.
brother slash Riri's possible love interest in the show. I thought he was a really grounded character as well, and even his like simple things like the headphones, which they kind of revealed later why he has opinions on things. I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
deeper than I thought it was going to be, but.
Yeah.
Well, since so I'll give Jim Rash constant praise where he's in there for just a short bit as one of the MIT kind of professors who ends up
Hmm.
kicking Riri out, but it's calling back all the way to Civil War in his cameo appearance in there.
Oh,
Oh, good eye.
Right? He was the one who's trying to sell Tony on the self-heating hot dog with like that detonators
Yeah,
inside,
yeah.
interesting. Okay.
which I'm also using this as establishment to talk about the kind of like the AI and the vision generation and how like
Hmm.
it seems a lot like it is what Tony gave to MIT in terms of the beginning of that scene, Civil War. I
Hmm.
think it heavily influenced Riri's tech when it came to the vision projector.
Yeah.
Yeah, good call, good catch. I didn't think about that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Also, shout out to Rampage. All right, let's keep it moving here. Let's go into plot. I don't have a breakdown of like individual plot as we go through this, but um, wanted to just, I guess, as always, kind of start off with, did we have things that we particularly loved or disliked as we went through some of the episodes? I mean, the short version of this is Riri's trying to raise some money, so she does some jobs and then finds out she's in with the bad crew who's into some maybe worse things than she thought, and then has to stop the bad guys. That's the short version of the show. But that's a little reductionist as well here. So, favorites or dislikes? Anything you liked here?
I Let me be the first to say, obviously the show started really slow. The first couple episodes gave some hesitation about continuing through, but it seemed like it hit episode three, and all of a sudden things started to click into place. It found kind of more of its motion, and then from that point, I think it honestly built. I would say it wasn't like exactly the same arc every single episode, but like there was some serious like, okay, well, this is why we're telling this part of the story. Where like after episode three, every episode really hit.
I can
Yeah,
agree with
I'd agree with that.
yeah. As I put on Facebook, Disney, stop front loading your shows with like 2 to 3 episodes that make me not want to continue the series. Andor season 2 did that. Ironheart did that, and I'm sure there are a few others, but those are like obviously the two most recent that we were talking about. But these first 2 episodes had just they were slow. They had a lot wrong with them. The character development really it just it felt like it was kind of all over the place. Just we get introductions, and it's like by the end of episode 2, it's like Riri is blackmailing people and just try to get what she
Hmm.
wants, and she's committing pretty serious crimes. It's like,
Yeah.
is she supposed to be a superhero? And honestly, I'm not sure I would have kept going past episode 2 if we weren't going to be talking about it. But I do agree. Once episode 3 hits, it kind of digs in its heels a bit and starts to actually do things that are interesting. And I'm glad that I stuck with it to see what they were attempting to do. I just wish it had been more consistent throughout. I will say, if I had a favorite episode, it's probably episode 4, where let me just, I got a set of notes in the back here. We do find a lot of, or we get a lot of character development in episode 4, I feel.
Yes.
And that really helped, ground the series for me. It hit on a lot of notes, and yeah, like I said, if the entire show had that level of quality, I would have, I would be looking upon it more highly than I might be at the end of this. But very slow start, very slow, inconsistent start. So
Yeah, I'll say 6 episodes. I think that's the shortest of these series that we've had. I think most of them are closer to 8.
how many episodes was Echo? I want to say that was pretty short too.
It's
Five or
pretty sure.
six, maybe.
Maybe that was 6.
But that one was
Yeah,
pretty short also.
But I appreciate how condensed this is.
hmm.
That said, at the very end, I was kind of like, I hope this is the beginning of like a second part, because it feels like we got a great story, but it feels like it's only the first act.
And that ending is very ambiguous if
Yeah,
you stop and think about it. But we'll get there.
Echo was 5, just for the record.
Oh,
there we go.
okay. It
Yeah,
felt like 10.
I would I would kind of go with what you guys are saying here as well. By first 2, I also was like, man, I don't know about this. And in retrospect, I've been trying to think of like how they could have restructured those first 2 episodes. I haven't come up with much yet, and I don't know if that is them. Like, it is a character we've met, but we don't really know squat about the character, even
Mhm.
in Black Panther 2, because it's just this girl that happens to be in the right place at the right time and is there. But
Here, let me suggest like I jump into episode 3, show one of the first big heists, and then do a like, how did I get here? And then
Sure.
then just kind of
yeah,
flashback some of this.
yeah, you
Yeah.
could do some of that. And the first 3 episodes all had, I think, was it all of the first 3 were the first 3 heists they did? Or was it 2, 3, 4 they did the heist?
Uh,
I want to say 2, 3, 4.
2, 3,
yeah, because
4,
I
was there
don't.
just a whole backstory one?
Yeah, well, the episode 1 is all pretty much Riri getting kicked out of MIT and whatnot,
Okay.
and then trying to find her footing, and she meets the gang, but she doesn't go on a heist until episode
Right.
2, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Episode 3, I think, is that the one where she's already trying to cut a chunk off the cape? I think it is.
Correct. As they're going
Um,
into that
that
lab
one,
in
like,
Lake
it
Michigan.
actually, towards the end of the episode, I actually looked down and noticed, like, my body language had changed. I was, like, sitting up, like, trying to
Really?
lean to the TV because I was
Mhm.
into that heist that they were doing, whether she was going to get caught. And when that guy who had the, like, whatever, the botany place or whatever you want to say, the conservatory, whatever it was,
Mhm.
like, turned the tables on the gang, I was like, oh, shit. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we've
That
ever seen that in
was
the MCU. That's pretty cool.
that was.
Maybe like a Hank Pym training exercise for Scott Lang or
Yeah,
something, but I
actually,
was
that's a great
like,
comparison. Yes.
oh, this is pretty awesome at this point here. So, and then Justin, episode 4, you mentioned that was my wife's, at least going into the end. I didn't ask her, but going into it, that was her favorite episode as well.
Mhm.
Just with, the opening up to her mom a little bit, and then she has like the moment with Natalie and a moment with Xavier, and it's just like like you said, a lot
And
of really strong connections, which I don't feel like those first 2 episodes made me feel, even though that's basically what they were spending time doing. So,
mhm.
um, yeah, so those were both great. I don't know if I had to pick a favorite one. This would be very hard because I was also a huge fan of the White Castle fight scene in episode
It
5.
wasn't like,
There are some
uh,
good fight scenes in this. Yeah.
yeah. I'll give a pause to say like a good shout out of for Chicago's first big representation in the MCU.
Mhm.
I don't know if I call it completely authentic, but there's definitely an attempt. And so some of the things like the White Castle felt like, okay, we you know where you're supposed to be filming this at.
Okay.
Nice, nice.
I haven't spent a lot of time in a White Castle ever in my life, but I kind of want to now just to see if
Yeah.
this shit goes down all the time.
Well, the robotic arms for a second when they're in the kitchen,
Yeah.
and you saw the robotic arms. I was like, that's a lie. That must be an MCU thing. No, the Flippy is an official thing of White Castle and has been since like
Yeah.
2001.
I didn't know it went back that far. I knew they were real. I didn't know they were that venerable. Holy crap. Didn't
Yeah,
hear about
that
that in Harold and Kumar.
yeah, right? Yeah, that was super fun though. And then just like how she has to kind of run the gamut of all of the people on the gang to get out of there and
Yeah,
Hmm.
just really enjoyable using the environment. I mean, it was, very video game-esque and like
Yeah.
what can I find around me to use against this particular bad guy?
yeah,
Okay, here we go. Da-da.
And I liked
yeah.
that she had to fight smart because she's not a big person.
No,
And not having like her tech, her suit and whatnot, she's not a physical powerhouse. So
Yes.
and she does get kind of tossed around a lot in some of these
yes,
fights. So yeah, seeing her, make snap decisions to try and get any advantage she can, it's like, okay, that's a very solid way to construct a fight scene.
yeah. Which brings up like again the performance. We'll have a lot of conversations about kind of like the reasoning behind things, but in terms of the physical performances, like she did fantastic,
Mhm.
especially when it came to things like her getting kind of ejected out of the suit, which happened a couple times. Every time
Yeah.
I'm like, holy crap, she really sold that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I definitely you point out something really good there, Justin, which is, even of the people we've seen in the MCU, she being I'll get flack for this, but being a female and also like a physically statured smaller person in the MCU, like she's probably among the weakest people we have actually spent time with without a power or a suit or something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, when she's, getting smacked in the face or getting those black eyes or cuts on her cheek or whatever, like it's pretty believable because she's not an intimidating presence, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I will though point out that when that suit grabbed Xavier and transported him in the soup, I was like, no,
Yeah, how did he
that
fit in
doesn't
that?
fit.
Thank you. It wasn't just me.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question, I guess. Maybe it expands on the
Like
legs and the torso. I mean,
it would have to, or else he got compressed.
he
Yeah, it's
did say it
like,
was terrifying, so I mean,
yeah.
there's that. All right, let's see what else we got here. Continuing down our plot lane here, what did you guys think of the family team coming together and then disassembling that beautiful car to make a suit out of
Oh,
it?
yeah, thematically in terms of especially connecting more with the Wakanda Forever movie because the car was in there.
Hmm, yeah.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and it also like her suit I thought looked awesome, but yeah, it did kill me. I'll also give
Yeah.
some criticism that every time she had to build a suit, it was like less than 24 hours. And I know Tony built it in a cave with a box of scraps, but it was over weeks. Or at least
Yeah,
that's the
That's true.
impression that I got.
Yeah, and
yeah.
sure, she had a garage and everything to disassemble that, but that would have, even with a crew of helpers, that would have taken some time. Um, I I liked the thematics of taking something that means so much and turning it into something that she needs. It's a sacrifice, and sacrifice is kind of a through line of the show, especially with the magic stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not sure. There's no way it could have been as tough as her previous suit, simply because a
I
car is
wondered
not
about
going to be.
that too. Yeah.
The
Yeah,
thin metal, yeah, I know.
yeah.
The
I,
engineering of it got to me.
yeah, back then, sure, maybe it was steel instead of aluminum, but still, it's not going to be as durable, but it's
Yes.
something. But it's comic book logic. I can work with it a little bit. So I liked that whole sequence.
Yeah, I guess the flip side is if it had taken her forever to build the suit, it would have just looked like Andor season one. So we don't want that either.
Mm,
Right, Dan? We
Solid
don't want
point.
we don't want that.
uh-huh.
But yeah, I see everything seems like it's just fast forwarded now when it happens in the
Yeah.
MCU. Like
I
if
mean,
it's something that's happened before, yeah.
Mhm.
while we're kind of on that scene too, I was surprised at how close they came to giving her moniker of Ironheart, but didn't in the entire show. No one ever
Mm,
even uttered those words. Obviously, they did. There
Huh.
was like it seemed like they were prepping it with that iron head on that wrench, which
yeah.
Mhm.
meant something to her. And I'm like, oh, that's a perfectly logical way to like get into it. But they
Yeah,
never. I was waiting for it, and they never did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't think about that.
same. Yeah.
But I will.
Logic.
huge credits to or I really love whenever they take and like put the title, like kind of build it into the show and something, like how they spelled out Ironheart and like
Hmm.
the money that they were throwing around in the third episode and stuff like that. I love when they build it into or Ironheart on the White Castle like fry box.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. That probably most creative we've seen other than maybe Ms. Marvel
I
for
was gonna
like
say it was in Ms.
Hmm.
Marvel too, and I loved it.
kind of putting that in like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was fun.
Absolutely. All right, let's chat for a minute about Natalie, because I think we need
Oof.
to talk about that piece of the show. So, if I understood this correctly, when she was basically scanning her own brain to create AI for her suit, somehow this glitch happens. I mean, it's not exactly clear, and I actually thought there was going to be another twist later in the show, which we'll get to. But she
I want to pin that too. Yes.
Hmm.
ends up making her own Jarvis, named and represented by her dead best friend, I guess, Natalie. So, how did this all work for you?
I'll take a step back and say in the comics, she has that, but it is
Hmm.
an AI representation of the recently dead Tony Stark. So in
Ah.
her comic, it's she's talking to like a simulation of Tony Stark every time instead of
Huh.
Natalie.
Ah, weird. Okay.
So in the fact that she never met Tony Stark in the MCU, like
Yeah.
this seems it would be really well both financially it would be like crazy for them to do this, but then also it wouldn't make a kind of a character arc sense. So
Uh,
I thought it was a really cool element that both her stepdad and Natalie are characters in the comics, and they did get killed in a drive-by, so that's accurate. And they I
The
think made
most
the
Chicago element of the series. No, I'm joking.
uh,
uh,
I thought it was a really wise choice of like bringing in someone who was going to give even more emotional resonance. It
Mhm.
also brought up that really weird question that we probably going to start having to ask ourselves more and more on the horizon here, which is like if you have the technology to effectively raise someone from the dead, is that okay? Or like what does that cause? And I love how they gave characters different reactions to her to kind of like
Mhm.
mhm.
show some of the different perspectives on it.
Especially her brother's reaction. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
and the fact that Riri was blindsided by it. I mean, it shows how overconfident she is sometimes, and
Mhm.
how she's smart, but to use D&D term, she's smart but not wise. A lot of the time, where
Yep.
very good at the technology and stuff, but people, ooh, she misread that horribly because
Mhm.
Xavier has a really believable reaction, like seeing his dead sister presented in front of him. It's like an uncanny valley switch
Oh
flips in
yeah.
his head, and he freaks out. And I after that scene, I've stopped and thought of like people I've lost. If suddenly someone presented like a walking, talking hologram of them to me, would I react any differently? And I'm not sure I would, at least not initially, because that's got to be jarring. Um,
Yeah,
so
and then her mom's on the opposite end of the spectrum, who
Yeah,
once
who
she
like
finally
loved
found out
it.
was just like,
yeah,
"Whoa, this is
and
great," you
and
know?
yeah,
asked
kind
her
of
to
a
do it for the husband.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
yes, yeah. So I mean, it shows kind of the spectrum of possible reactions to this sort of thing, and I even after giving it some thought, I'm really not 100% sure where I would fall on that range. So
Yeah,
it's an interesting thought experiment, really.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give Riri like I think it makes a lot of sense, especially for her that like this was a friend she grew up with and like was kind of like at the beginning of a new arc of her life. I think that led her to both her personality and also like kind of where she was in her development to cause her to go like, oh, this is okay, I can accept this. Like that's kind of the way I read it. And I said, okay, that makes sense for Riri. And I agree. The brother's reaction, that kind of makes sense because he's already showing all of that like well this I keep these headphones even though they're all banged up because like this is Natalie to me, this is how I'm keeping a representation of her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
but like I said earlier, great performance from
Oh
the
yeah.
actress playing her. Yeah.
even the
And
like ideas of when the people that didn't like her being around, or when there was a chance they could lose her, the idea of like how human can an AI be? Because they were like, well, I can't kill her. Like,
Yeah.
but some people are like, she's not even real, and they're like, still, she's like now at this point now she's real to me. So this is like
Yeah.
killing her again now. So it's
Hmm.
So, and this is a little bit of like overthinking of the engineering. Like I caught myself about midway through going, she seems like way more human than AI. Because like
Hmm.
Jarvis and Friday, they would constantly like they'd bring in the
yeah,
techno jargon and stuff like that, and and Natalie started to drop that really quickly. And I think it was the feedback Riri had for her right away of like, no, like you need to be more human, you need to be more like her. And then they had that great scene of Natalie in AI representation. She didn't have to do this, but like she projected her face in the suit and she was rewatching live Natalie, like her facial reactions and her
Yeah,
smiling and trying to match it. And that to me said, okay, that's what Natalie has been doing in the background is going, I'm not real enough for Riri. I'm going to keep getting better at that.
yeah. Iterative learning and such, which we already are seeing bits of
Hmm.
with AI today. So yeah, that seems very believable, actually.
Yeah. And then that caused, yeah, with spoilers when we lose her for like
yeah.
I literally I haven't been that tense in an MCU film in a while, being like, are they really going to yank her away and that we just got her?
Yeah, that caught me kind of off guard too. So kudos to the show for pulling curveballs like that from time to time.
Yeah. Also, it's weird to think about too. Is a lot of we can talk about here with AI because it's mostly a topic we haven't really talked about on the podcast. But then also, if this was like basically a brain scan of Riri's, like it's also not truly Natalie, period, right? Because this is
Yes.
her perception or her memory of what she did with Natalie,
Yeah.
which of course can't
Hmm.
be the 100% of her. So there's that factor too, which is interesting.
That's an interesting one. I also really appreciated this was the other mom, the mom of shoot the
Yeah,
sorcerer.
Zelma.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, bringing up the fact of, well, technology isn't good or bad. It's good or bad people using technology in good or bad ways.
Hmm.
I think that was a kind of an interesting element that it got brought in too, because we saw that across the gamut here of like here's some technology that like is kind of on the surface neutral, but here's someone using it for good, someone using it for bad.
Hmm. And then to contrast that with the magic side of things,
Yeah.
which can be objectively good or objectively bad, it was also kind of an interesting thematic choice. So the more I talk about this, the more I realize there is a lot going on under the surface, which is intriguing.
I think there's way more that you could talk about on this show than people probably would have noticed at first watch through,
Mhm.
Yeah.
especially, casual that might have just turned this on and checked out what the show was or whatnot. But okay, let me keep going here. This is really not comment for this section. I'm going to move that down there. But let's talk about the final fight, if you will, up to the other thing we'll talk about here. But let's talk about how it goes between the Hood and Riri when that fight goes down. How did you like that scene?
I I love the fact that you had technology. In this case, it was technology mixed with magic, fighting magic. It was
Mhm.
nice to see like uh non-paralleled hero villain. I think the
Yes.
biggest one is Black Panther. Like you have two people in the black, almost identical Black Panther suits. That was okay. Well,
Yeah.
I guess it comes down to skill in here. It was very interesting to see this kind of like non-paralleled characters and how they have to figure each other out. And I thought it was an incredibly short fight for the MCU. It was an incredibly like non-destructive fight. Like we didn't destroy any buildings.
Yeah, it took place
Mm.
in
Uh,
like an apartment room.
yeah,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it felt really fulfilling. Despite that, like I really enjoyed, and especially enjoyed the kind of the twist replayed on Hood.
Yes. The whole, yeah. I don't know. I don't necessarily want to spoil that part, but that was clever.
Yeah,
Um, and I do have to echo the fact that I knew I had gotten tired of the mirror matches that we've gotten in a lot of Marvel properties, but I hadn't realized just how refreshing two different characters fighting each other could be until I saw this fight. Or even like the fight between her and Zeke after he gets
yeah,
modified, because yeah, you can even go back to like the original Iron Man movie where it's just two guys in suits fighting each other, and one's bigger and stronger, but they're functionally the same. And you just like the Hulk movie is notorious for this, more or less. And it's just there are the Marvel universe is gigantic in terms of characters they can draw from and whatnot. It's took them forever to finally start using, doing like mix match fights, and I'm glad they're finally freaking doing it because
Hmm.
there's so many of the other properties have been just same two guys fighting each other or same two girls fighting each other or what have you.
Have you seen Brave New World?
I have
Well,
not.
I can almost guarantee you that fight was based on the criticism, the very
Hmm.
fair criticism that like, hey, let's start to see some like some things where it's a challenge. It's not just straight
Okay.
up. So problems with that movie aside, I
Yeah.
have a feeling that quite honestly, we're probably going to see dramatically less of the same two superpowers go up against each other.
I sure as hell hope so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we will pause the plot thread there. Let's go down this other rabbit hole now that I think we were all kind of waiting to
Oh
chat
yeah.
about a little bit here.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you guys first, what did you think of the red herring of using the name Dormammu through a lot of the series?
Great. It was a in retrospect obvious misdirect, but like man,
Mhm.
it was great to throw that out there and to bring like mention Caecilius.
Yeah,
Like they did a
Mhm.
great job dropping all
selling it down. Yeah, for
Doctor
sure.
Strange East yeah names. So
Yeah, Camertage and all
fantastic.
that being dropped
Yeah.
in there at one point. It's like, okay. I liked the idea that, hey, we might actually be getting a recurring villain for a change because it's been ages since we've really had that. I mean, pretty
Yeah.
much since Thanos.
Yeah,
Um, and it's like, okay, that I can get behind this. It doesn't really seem like Dormammu's MO, like making deals with people and that sort of thing. And interestingly, before that, I there was a little voice in the back of my head when they're talking about certain qualities of the cloak, where I jokingly said, "Oh, if it's gonna be character it ends up being," and I don't want to spoil that reveal, but I mean, because I'm sure Cody wants to drop that,
oh, you can
but
you can do it. Go ahead.
okay. So when they're first talking, it first seems like there's something wrong with the cloak that the Hood is wearing. The I think Clown ends up like picking the safe in his room, and like she comes out, she's wearing it, and she's like, "Oh, this just doesn't feel right. It's like hot, but not she says it in kind of a stupid way. It's like hot, but not in a sexy way." And
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah, whatever. But so I'm thinking, oh, it's a cloak from hell. It's Mephisto because it's never Mephisto. Mephisto is like
I
the
know.
Yeah.
lupus. It's like lupus from House MD. I mean, he always comes up. It's like, oh, it's totally gonna be that, and it's never him. It's
Yep.
fucking Mephisto in this one. And what the Dormammu thing was a nice, like you said, misdirect because even though it didn't seem like what something he would do, it's like, okay, they're going this direction with it,
And
and of
it
course
kind of
it's not
fit
going to be.
enough.
What was that?
It fit enough.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, of course, it's not going to be Mephisto. That's an in joke at this point. And then,
Yeah.
uh, I was not expecting that.
You like it a pizza? You like it a pizza.
Like at a pizza.
You like it a pizza. So
And oh, his performance, I think he did a pretty damn good job.
Yeah.
I liked it as well. To the
Like,
Yeah.
point where I was like, is that
Oh yeah.
Soccer
yeah, and
Cone? Yes, it is. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
He's such a
And
diverse
yeah,
way he presents himself and everything anyway, but what a great choice to have hop in and play that character though.
right.
yeah,
Just
and
just the right amount of swarmy, but
yeah.
purposeful and forceful when necessary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, tell me what you really want. You know you want to.
Yeah.
Just that sort of like unctuous, oily, and yet
Yeah.
compelling delivery. And
Oh,
it
he
works
used the
so
word
well.
desire, and it's so punctuated exactly.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's what this guy's about. So just knowing the comics and the Hood, like it was, like are they gonna stick with it? Are they really gonna be like this audacious? So I had a hope, but like
Mhm.
I was pleasantly surprised when not only was it just like, yeah, they're doing this, it's like, no, we're doing it big, and you're getting almost like half an episode of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And oh. Yeah, that was cool.
Yes.
Did you wonder why he had square pizza the first time and triangle pizza the second time?
Yes,
I
I
thought that was
did.
just me. Okay.
No, no, no. Because there's only one slice of the circle pizza
Yeah.
cut out. So where did and
Reflects your true nature, whether you're a triangle or a square.
well, how Mephisto of it to be like, well, you can have your little pizza, but I have my own, and I'm going to do the deep, decadent deep dish.
Chicago style.
Yeah.
uh,
That was great. The scene with Parker when he first, because he had the flashback first with him there, that was uh really fun. And then I think they don't say who he is till Riri, right? Is that correct?
mhm.
She asks who
Correct.
he was. That's how it played out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seemed like he was, and I guess he was offering Parker a lot of power, but at the same time, I was like, oh, I don't know, he kind of gave him a cape that gave him a couple magical abilities, but like basically made it sound like he could like take over the world with this cape or something, and he just didn't fulfill his potential. And I'm like, well, it's still just a cape that you can do some stuff with. I don't know.
I I think it reflected the actual scope of Parker's desires. Like Parker wanted money, but and he wanted to be, important and powerful, but that's as far as it really, really went.
Hmm.
He could have tried to push it further, but I think Mephisto gave him the tools to meet those ends and nothing more, unless he really, really pushed it.
Okay.
Which totally seems like Mephisto's MO.
Yeah, I so to get to some, Cody, I'm imagining this is what we were alluding to much earlier. We're about to get to, but I think it was a great writing. How much Mephisto, when he's talking to Riri, he's like, "I've been watching you for a while, and you're different. You're unique." And the fact that her like motivation and drive throughout the entire season was about being iconic, and they never put parameters around that. There was no like flash forward scene to like, "Oh, this is what she wants," or like, "Oh, I'm dreaming of this statue," or something like that. And I I think now after seeing the entire series, especially seeing this scene, it makes you go back and go like, well, maybe that's because she's got some drive, some she wants to be iconic in a way we don't even understand that maybe like is a little bit villainous. And that is the thing Mephisto like is so interested in her about because of that. Like and then yeah, this comparison to like, well, Parker, you just want money and like to be a king, fine. Here's your little thing. And I think all that leads into it, Cody, tell me how much of this is matching up with yours.
Yeah.
It seems like the hood is almost like one of the chess pieces in his board about really getting Riri for a bigger plan. To the
Hmm.
point where I'd be very suspicious that, or I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that Natalie was actually Mephisto's plan. Like he was that was a plant. That was something he put in for Riri because he knew how much of an impact it would have and how much more it would motivate her.
Yeah, I was totally
Ooh.
thinking that it was no glitch. Like whoever put that there put it there on purpose.
Especially
Um,
when some other magic got introduced and she disappeared. That was
yes.
like,
Mm.
okay.
Well, yeah, I
I
didn't even connect that part per se, but yeah, yeah.
I took that part to be the sacrifice Riri needed to make for this other magic to work. Because this Alma, said up front, all magic, has a price. Some of them are
Yeah.
quite large. So I figured Natalie disappearing was the price for getting her suit to work. But this other angle is definitely interesting to think about.
Especially with how this series ended and how much it feels like, oh, we like there's gotta be a part two. And I would not be surprised if in part two there's a scene where Professor literally goes like, I made Natalie.
Well,
It's
so yeah, so
possible.
let's go back to this. So we have Riri essentially basically done with the conversation with Mephisto, and then kind of he's like, "Well, what would you want? Basically, if you could have anything, and she's like, obviously, it's going to be to bring her best friend back, who we've seen through the whole series as AI, which does match up with, you talked about the iconic thing, but like the one consistent with Riri through the series was every time somebody asked her, like, what do you need all these suits for? Why do you want to do it? It was always to like, I need to be able to like protect my family and the people that I love. Um, and this
Mhm.
this then spun into the ultimate version of that, of like, well, can you protect somebody you love even from the grave to bring back to life? And that's kind of what is offered here. And then we don't see initially what happens, which I assumed, and you guys tell me what you think, but I
Mhm.
assumed she did not take the deal.
Yeah, same.
I it's ambiguous. Because okay, the way Mephisto worked with the Hood, it's not like he just snapped his fingers and gave him all this money and power and whatnot. He gave him tools to get there. When we see Riri bringing Natalie back, she's got whiteboards with arcane diagrams. She's got her she's in her workshop. She's got all this stuff that she's clearly been working on for a long time. That also seems like information that Mephisto could have provided her, like pushed her along the right path to get to where she wanted to be without actually just snapping his fingers and making Natalie come back. She so it seems plausible she could have taken the deal to me. Um, but at the same time, it's also possible she could have just buckled down and done, just dove headfirst into this completely alien territory of arcane research and found the knowledge on her own.
Mhm.
It's really up for debate, and I'm not sure. And if she did take the deal, that's almost in a way more compelling because now that she's gotten what she wants, how much time does she have left? Can she try to fight her fate and win back her soul from Mephisto? Does this light a fire under her to be a good person, to become more heroic, to actually achieve, strive to make a difference in the world beyond just protecting your family, but protecting everyone? Does this give her motivation to try to just overcome fate by through her own force of will and intellect? I mean, that could also be really interesting. So there's a part of me that almost says I kind of hope she did take the deal just so she has something to fight against. Um,
What?
The scene is shot very cleverly, right?
mm,
Because when my wife and I watched it, she said afterwards it looked like the research she was doing, there's no way you could quantify this, but the research she was doing on like the whiteboards and stuff was just like general work that she was working on, like some scientific research that she was working on. Because when Natalie does pop back up, like it's very unexpected for Riri. Like
mm,
she clearly does know that that moment is about to happen. She's just there all of a sudden, much
mm.
like she was the first time. And then we get the reveal that, it's not an AI this time. It's
Mm.
apparently really her,
Flesh
or
and
maybe
blood?
zombie her, or who knows what, Hellspawn her, who knows,
Or a scroll.
or a scroll, and
I
Mephisto's
like
been played too. Oh man, that'd be they need to
Secret
do that at
invasion.
some point. Not even really Mephisto was a scroll the whole time. That'll be how
oh,
season two starts.
more the disappointment of Secret Invasion. All right, continue.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
Nick Fury. But
Oh,
yeah, I assume when she popped back up, then that's when I assumed she did take the deal, I think is what I concluded. But I don't understand the timing of it would be the problem because then like did Mephisto be like, you have to do all this research like Justin's saying, or was he
mm.
like, if you're good, sometime in the near future, she's gonna come back to life? Like a delayed Santa Claus or
Mm.
something? I'm not really sure. But she does pop back up and it's seemingly
Yeah.
real, so
I honestly I really appreciate the kind of the ambiguity and the questions this is alluding to. It's been a while since the MCU has kind of given us something to really like think about and gnaw on for a bit. I'll make the comparison. Ant-Man Quantumania, there's a scene at the very end where like Scott Lang's like, wait, did we really defeat Kang? Like, did this all really work out? And like, I remember being in the theater being like, oh, this is cool. What if they just leave it like this? And then he immediately goes like, nah, everything's fine. And I was like, you just ruined this great nugget you put in there. So this show, I think, did it right in terms of there's some big questions. And again, I really hope there's season two or there's some way that they kind of close this up.
Same. Yeah, it's probably the best ending to a Marvel property I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
it's like if they had ever so slightly changed the ending of Agatha All Along, right? Is the Witch's Road real or not?
Yes.
Which
Mm.
was really, I mean, much longer extended is a questionable thing, I guess, once we kind of had the seed planted. But uh yeah, really interesting. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of love the fact that we could have like a hero in the MCU whose soul is kind of owned by the devil at the moment.
Yeah, and that's not
Ghost
unusual,
Rider.
right? Well, I just you have almost like a Ghost Rider-esque like
Yeah.
character because Ghost
Yeah.
Rider has a very similar origin. I mean,
Yeah.
and here's my complete fan dreaming like Ghost Rider Ironheart. Like that would be really cool.
That could be.
Hmm. I did like that Mephisto was like, what do you say? Like, I controlled the last 14 kings and queens, and he listed like somebody. Yeah, I
And some
noticed he didn't
popes.
list any U.S. presidents because he was like, fuck, I ain't getting into that shit. They're too dark for me.
But one beetle.
One
One,
beetle.
yeah, everyone knew it was Ringo.
Yeah, that was funny. Even my kids
Yeah.
laughed. My kids even laughed at that, and they weren't even like huge Beatles people. But
Nice.
I have to
uh,
ask what you guys thought about the reflection in the spoon.
um,
I'm trying to remember that.
remind
Because it
me.
was,
So when he's talking to Riri, he
Yeah.
has like a cup of tea or coffee, and he's got a spoon. And for just a split second, it shows the spoon kind of like coming out of the coffee. It's like a close up of that,
mhm.
and he's dripping it off. And then in the spoon's reflection, you can see the bright red face of like the very stereotypical devil
Ooh.
Mephisto.
I
Oh,
must have
I
blinked. I
didn't
did
see
not see
It's
that.
that.
it's like 5 or 6 frames. Go
Oh
back. It's really
man.
cool.
Okay.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
I might have been
My,
typing up notes when that happened or something. So yeah, I will have to go back and watch that.
Like I bet if you Google Mephisto and spoon or whatever, you get a
oh
couple
yeah,
screen
good call.
captures.
Okay.
But
Neat.
that was the coolest element. I thought that was really super subtle, but very cool. And it's not super clear. Like obviously it's distorted in the spoon, but it's very clearly like this bright devil face.
Huh.
And I was like, that is a great way to like totally confirm, almost get to the comics accurate, but like still leave that nugget of this out there.
Yeah. Neat.
Oh, I see it there. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I did not catch that, so that's super cool. I did notice him playing with a spoon, but I didn't put two and two together to look, I guess.
Huh.
Getting lazy. They don't expect me to look at these things anymore.
Well, and that's a more credit to the show that there's small details like this, that they're being
Yeah.
purposeful and subtle and nuanced. Like there's multiple, like it really, again, the first couple episodes didn't give you this impression, but they brought in the magic angle, and I was like, this is cool and different and
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. It's not like a huge, I mean, it's kind of still grainy and
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but
just enough for
it's
the hint,
visible.
it's
but
just
it is
Yeah.
pretty cool though.
Glowy eyes and yeah. Neat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, and then let's shit all over this series. What do you guys think of the final scene of the season?
Um, oh God, I'm trying to remember what that was.
So this
yeah.
was
Remind us.
the post credit basically. Parker goes into the candy store, which is the magic
Oh
store,
yes,
and
okay.
then
Yeah, okay, yeah, the part where it's just magic all over the place and yeah. Ah, I don't know enough about his character from the comics to know if that's alluding to something. Um,
how
or if he's just trying to get his magic fix again, since
Yeah,
he lost the cloak.
I enjoyed Anthony Ramos's portrayal of the character enough where I'm totally here to see something more, or maybe him trying to claw his way back. But in the comics, he uses demonic powers to like help coordinate and build this criminal empire.
Hmm.
And like if eventually they do something like that, yes. If this is him now, like I'm magic addicted and I'm just trying to get my next fix, I don't know about that.
That's really what they made it seem like with his, you don't know what it's like without the cloak. It's everything is pain until yeah. So it really made it seem like they were trying to draw a connection there between that type of magic and addiction. So
So, so my biggest problem with this scene was he goes in there to get magic help because he apparently also found this place's address scrawled on the inside of a bathroom wall or something. But then when he goes in there, like he's face to face with Zelma, who just spent like days prepping to beat this guy, but apparently never knew what he looked like. And so he
That's an
walks in
excellent
the
point,
shop, and then she's like, "Oh, I got squares, all sorts that you could use.
right? But
Let
they
me
didn't have any kind of
transport you to a different dimension."
they didn't have any kind of glyphs or like warning mechanisms for like, hey, there's some bad magic is just walking in here.
you'd
Well, I thought
think.
about that part, but I thought maybe since he didn't have the cape anymore, like he evaded that, and that's why it never like triggered with her that like a bad magic was coming into the store. But still, like you got to know what this guy looks like that you've been fighting.
I would hope so. I
You'd
would hope
think.
so.
Uh, yeah, definitely not the strongest scene in the show by any
I kind of
means.
wish they hadn't had that scene and just ended it where it ended, to be
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been
honest.
stronger.
Like,
Or again, giving credit for like the show was held back in some areas, it was more powerful. Just showing him walking up to the sweet store would have been
Hmm.
enough. He didn't even
Yeah,
have to go in.
yeah, that's true. Then we could have just, yeah,
In
that would have
fairness.
even that would have been
wondered.
better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, But that conversation triggered a memory. I want to make sure to give a big shout out to that. They finally did well, why didn't you just call an Avenger? Like that scene where
Yes.
Natalie asked Riri, like, why don't you just call Shuri? And she like explained why. I
Yeah.
mean, part of it was kind of weak. Like, really, you
Yeah.
can't like embarrass yourself in front of Shuri a little. But I was so tickled the fact that they finally did that because that's a huge credit. Like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that was a lot of it. It was like, why don't they just call another Avenger?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Uh,
Absolutely. All right, I got a couple more things for you guys here. Let's see. I wanted to, well, actually, let's do this part first. So, the show, as I have seen it here, and I mentioned a little bit of this earlier, but I've seen some criticism for the show online because of the usage of magic being wielded so easily or so professionally, maybe is a better way to put it here by Zelma and her mom. And it seemingly sounds like there must be these underground pockets of people who have studied and somehow have, in their time away from Kamartaj, become more apt to use spells than anybody else we've seen in the MCU so far. Doctor Strange and Wong. Um, Thoughts on that?
I appreciate, I'll make more comparisons to Harry Potter, which is like one of the things I struggled with until they did the Fantastic Beasts was like, okay, well, what's magic like in America? All this is happening in England. Like, where are the American wizards and what's going on? And the assumption I always had was, well, there's got to be an equivalent school and there's got to be people out there that, have the ability to do this and wield this, even though it's like unfocused and maybe I'll make a comparison to like the Force in Star Wars, right? Where they make efforts to identify people who are especially like powerful, like,
Yeah.
and they try to train them early on, but they're not going to get everyone. And that the person who kind of gets into it and is able to wield a lot of it fast, like that, toward leans them towards corruption. So in my mind, I kind of just applied that similar logic from Harry Potter and Star Wars into this, going, okay, it's got to be all over. Not everyone can go to one of these magical schools, and what does it look like for the people who can't?
yeah, it's on the one hand, yeah, it does feel weird that these not quite randos, but these characters that are just not focal points, not lifelong students, that they can just sling spells left and right, and command this kind of power. It does feel kind of odd, but at the same time, there's a part of me that's just happy to see magic being brought back as a more focal point into the MCU. Um, but yeah, there is definitely a bit of a disconnect to how it was presented as like the domain of only a select few, and then all of a sudden, sure, a few of these people did study in Camertage or like in other capacities, like with the Coven from Agatha and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. They need to pick a lane and stay in it. Either magic is fairly widespread and a certain select few are really have a strong aptitude for it, or it's something that requires lifelong study and only a few gatekeepers control that knowledge. They need to pick one and stick with it. So
Yeah.
It's not. I'll give you credit. It's not playing it by its own. It doesn't have any rules by which to play by, so it's
mhm.
definitely not playing by its own rules.
Yeah.
Even though like Doctor Strange 2, if you haven't blocked that movie out of your memory, if you remember that one, when Doctor Strange encountered America Chavez, right, who like could leap between dimensions, like that was her weird special skill, and he's like, oh my God, like somebody can do that, and here, the girl at the counter is just like, bloop, 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 and then they're like
Yeah.
transporting, and I'm like, what the fuck, like, what are they gonna
Yeah.
bring that character back into the MCU if they ever do now? Be like, hey, listen, we know you had a cool power then, but we don't really need you anymore, so go home.
But talking about America Chavez, she figured out she could do that because she was afraid of a bee. So it's not like she went through a whole lot of training to be able to do that.
I wonder if my wife can do that. Interesting. My wife and daughter both are afraid of bees, and she doesn't need cool rings to like make little circles to jump between areas. I don't know.
Uh,
On the one hand, I attribute it to what we were talking about earlier, which is just like later in the MCU's run, we got to speed this up. So yeah, there's other magic
Mhm.
users. Yeah, they can use spells and blah blah blah. And I'm sure probably next time we see Doctor Strange on screen, guess what? He'll have somehow magically improved a lot of his skills as well by the time we get back to that, because we've done that origin story, right? So we don't want to live through it again.
Mhm.
if they do that Supreme Academy, they can explain this and kind of like
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if a storyline in there is, oh, this person learned all this rogue magic out on the street, and like we're not going to allow you to do that here because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Professor Casilius, tell us about the time.
Yeah, right.
Um, so on the topic of magic here, open discussion here. How strong do you guys think Mephisto is going to be in the MCU? And side question, as another criticism I saw online, is this the wrong time to bring him into the MCU?
An
I
excellent question.
did you want to go first or should I?
No, please.
Okay. I'm going to tackle that side question first because, in general, like while I was watching this, the thought kept coming to my head that this would have worked so much better and would have been such a stronger show if it had been introduced like back in phase four, like
Mhm.
right after Endgame, where it seemed like they were already trying to do something where it's like magic is going to be the next big thing in the MCU. With between Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange, in the Multiverse of Madness, WandaVision, Moon Knight,
Yep.
even where it's like it's all either magical artifacts or magical powers that seem like they're the focal point of where they were going, and then
Yeah.
they just drove the car off a cliff. Um, if this had come out like 4 or 5 years ago, God, has it been for like 5 years? It has.
Mhm.
Yeah, if this had come out then, it would have slotted in very well with all the other things they were trying to do. Because you've got like literal gods in Moon Knight. You've got the rings, which are a magical artifact in Shang-Chi. You've got Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, just an incredibly powerful being that is using magic. It would have fit thematically. It would have given the whole MCU an even a solid sense of direction combined with all these other things. Um, I think that would have been the right time. It's still a show that does a lot of interesting things, but it feels like it exists in a vacuum now. Like, how does any of this connect to Secret Invasion? How does it connect to the multiverse stuff that we've seen? How does it connect to I already said Secret Invasion with the Skrulls, but there's like all these other things that don't seem to connect to anything at all, and this seems like a good solid base with a very powerful looking villain.
Hmm.
Are they going to do anything with it? I don't know. Um, because Mephisto in the comics is very fucking powerful. He's more a manipulator than anything, but you still don't pick a fight with him. He'll wipe the floor with more or less anybody. If from what I remember, it's been a while since I've really read much of the comics, but he's a force to be reckoned with,
Mhm.
and he would have been an excellent focus in a magic themed arc of the MCU. Is that the focus at this point, though? I don't know. I
Uh, it's fascinating you brought up the timing of this because they casted Anthony Ramos as the Hood in 2022. So
Whoa.
they've had this idea for this concept and it fit in exactly with the timeline you were talking about that
Oh.
that phase five, the kind of like the gods and magic phase. So this was originally planned out for that. And obviously it looks like filming in 2023.
Okay.
So I've heard this criticism about the show too, is that they've literally had this for a couple of years. I'm sure they've been editing and stuff, but they just like they've waited to release on it
Mm.
because it does thematically it fits a lot closer to that.
Yeah.
I'm always up for a good villain reveal in the MCU, but when you think about now we have Doctor Doom on the horizon, we have Galactus in 3 weeks here.
Oh
We
yeah.
have Kang that was written out of the story
Yeah.
slash rumors could be back in the story slash who knows what's going to happen with that arc.
Oh, that's
And then
nice.
you have the X-Men on the horizon as well,
Yeah.
starting to trickle in. So you obviously going to have to think you have like the Brotherhood and Magneto and other things coming in there. So
Hmm.
to have a devoted magic phase, I don't think that's going to happen. Now, could they keep several of these TV shows connected with a run through somehow and just not go the obvious route of like mentioning that, the TV characters are dealing with this magical devil and maybe they do bring out
Yeah,
like a Ghost Rider show and some other things that they could fit in with this. And then you also have Kingpin and the like street level stuff going on
Yep.
too. So
yeah.
I mean, and I think that's another problem where in the comics, we just kind of accept all that as it works, right? Because
Yeah.
he was everywhere. But when you're watching only this single thing at a time, you're like, wait a second, what about?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I loved it
Yeah.
when I saw it, when I thought about more, I was like, it is kind of interesting that they would bring him in now. Now he also seems like a character that very easily could sit in the shadows and continue
Oh
to
yeah.
relate for
Mhm.
a long time here. But what else were you gonna say, Dan? You had more there, I think.
Well, I think from a Marvel Studios perspective, if you started to, and Justin, you brought this up earlier, if
Mhm.
you sort of hedge all your bets on like we're gonna have one meta villain of Kang, and then things happened, I guarantee you what your response is gonna be like, we're not gonna do one meta villain. We're gonna have like a couple, and that
Mhm.
we could possibly
Yes, that's
interchange or
true.
that we can kind of
Mhm.
rely on. So Doctor Doom, Galactus, Mephisto, they're probably gonna bring in like another. I see that as a like strategy. So that
Okay.
I think that totally makes sense. Cody, I think you're completely right in terms of like we're at a phase where I don't even think any if they did do one kind of like main villain or one super main storyline, I don't think people would be super happy with that because
Mhm.
you're not like it's big enough where you can have the street level stuff and the magical demon stuff and the cosmic stuff. And for a
Mhm.
while we kind of had that, and it's just Infinity War and Endgame kind of bundled that all together nicely.
Yeah.
So I think we spread out again. Maybe there's some events that kind of bundle it back together, but I think for their safety, they're not going to put all their eggs in one basket again.
I did think it would be super. I don't think they would ever do this. Maybe they would, but I don't. It'd
Yeah.
have to be really the perfect circumstance. But if they had like, let's say they kept this character in the shadows, but he popped up maybe once a year in some property or every other year, even with a little bit of screen time here and there, and they got to like some mega event, like let's say it's a Secret Invasion or something like that, and then like they wrote themselves into a point where like the heroes actually couldn't defeat the villain, whoever it would be in the movie, Doctor Doom or whoever, and like just as Doctor Doom was about to unleash like this irrevocable power which they could never come back from, like Mephisto stepped out of the shadows and he stopped the villain, or somehow there's a villain
Offered
that
them a
plays
deal.
against
Choose.
another
Yeah.
villain because in his mind he's like I couldn't let that person do that because it would supersede my power, so I had to stop him.
Hmm.
And just the ability to have these multiple pulling forces of evil across the
Yeah,
universe could create a situation like that, which I think would be awesome. I don't know if they would do that at the sake of their heroes, but I think it'd be a bold choice.
yeah, I
Hmm.
agree. And like
Fair.
that's in the comics. You could totally do that. And what a fascinating storyline.
That would be. I would watch that.
That being said, they're all Skrulls, so it doesn't matter. Everybody died at the end of the Avengers. Since then, it's all been Skrulls.
Um,
So
I do
Avengers 1,
like
to be clear.
the bringing Mephisto up does mean that at some point they can like just pull something completely out of their ass and be like, oh yeah, well
Hmm.
this was all like a ploy. This didn't
That's
actually. This is the way
true.
it happened. They could also sit around and tie up a whole bunch of loose ends and post credits that
Hmm.
everyone's always complaining about. Like this was never addressed when Mephisto did this behind the scenes.
Oh,
And
that's true. Yeah.
yeah.
He was all 12 of the cameos of people who've
Yep,
never resurfaced.
exactly.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly. You think he gave Harry Styles his own pet troll for nothing? Come on. All right. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, let's wrap up this chunk here. I could not see anything. As far as I can tell, there is no season two announced on this yet. Does anybody
Nope.
have anything else on that? We're just kind of floating at the
have
moment.
yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we do some wrap-up scores and comments, and then we'll just briefly mention, I think, by my count at least, I think there's four more things coming out here by the end of the calendar year, so we'll just touch on those super quick, and we'll call it a day here. So, anybody want to go first on this one?
I can take the first one. So
Okay.
if I remember right about Brave New World, I'm trying to like compare something that was one of my lower scores recently. I think I did like a five-ish. Um, this like I'm gonna give it a 7.7. Those first couple episodes really, really like took the score down. I think there's a lot of really cool things, but I'm actually lowering the score here because I'm so concerned that we're never going to get any kind of conclusion to any of this. Marvel, and I think part of it is the reaction, like we were saying earlier, with like how different the scores are across different websites, and the reaction of this seems like so divided. It feels like a property is not going to be touched again, and because of that, it feels like we've only gotten half the story.
7-7,
That's
you said?
7.7.
I mean, I still hold out hope. There's always Secret Wars, and if they want to, they could always mop the floor with every character they have in the MCU if they want to. So I hold out hope until that movie hits. But Justin, want me to go next?
I can go next,
Okay.
unless you really wanted to.
Don't care. I can go quick. Just
Sure.
to me, this is one where I feel like, again, how strong you think Riri's performance is in the show as a character is probably where your score is on this for the overall TV show. This is another one too that I thought was really interesting, and sadly, it doesn't sound like as many people watched it as should have. Thunderbolts. Justin, have you
Hmm.
seen that or not?
I have not.
Okay, well, it's not a spoiler really to say that the movie really deals with a lot of trauma
Yes.
and like to the point where I said I cried in the theater. Like it's an emotionally moving film, but it's
Hmm.
getting into a lot of the newer MCU stuff, which really is bringing in a lot more of this real world trauma in the form of storytelling in the MCU now. And this one was very similar to me. Like you imagine to watch, your stepdad and your best friend be shot in front of your eyes while you're in the garage and then they're gone and then suddenly somehow she pops back up in your life again and I mean, this has got a lot of deep stuff in here, a lot of deep relationships that are pretty complex between her and Xavier and her mom and other people as well. And just this idea of like Riri is trying so hard to save the people that she loves in her life that she may actually be sacrificing her own life to save those people, like by trying to stop the hood or infiltrate the gang or get the money or build the suit or whatever. Is like she's continually pushing herself further and further, to where, like we said, she's not metahuman. She's
Hmm.
just a girl who's looking pretty bad by the end of the show with her bruises and stuff that she has on her. But she's doing it from a place of love and care, I think. I do like the ambiguity. There we go to the ending of the show. Overall, really, really enjoyed it. Those first two episodes are going to harm my score, sadly, a little bit here as well. Though I sometimes can offer a way that I think they could have improved them. I'm not really sure what they could have done here. I guess maybe condensed the like quick backstory into one or something, but I don't know. But it was fun for me. I would definitely watch it again and probably pick up more I didn't see the first time. So I'm gonna do 7.5 on this one, I think.
Okay. You know, mentioning like Riri's character and such, I mean, she has an arc certainly, and by the end, yeah, I could certainly sympathize with her. That doesn't change the fact that in the middle of the show, she just leaves a man to die in a horrible, horrible way by suffocating to death as the air is leached out of the chamber where he's trapped. She, while having had the chance to save him, if she wanted to, she was in the suit at that point. He
Hmm.
wasn't a threat anymore. He was dying, literally. And the heroic thing, the right thing to do, even though it would have caused her problems down the line, is grab him and pull him out of that room before those doors close. Sure, he would have been a complication later on. He would have been a problem to deal with, but it would have been saving a life. And if you're expecting me to believe that your character is a hero or aspiring to be heroic, that's what you do. Unless you're like the Punisher or maybe Ghost Rider or something like that, one of the darker heroes. But I realized she was probably panicking and such, but at that point, she's in the suit. She has her own air supply. A man is dying in front of her. The right thing to do is you save that man. That really kind of bothered me for a while about her character. It's like, how much do I really want to root for someone who would do something like that?
Okay.
Um, so, like I said, by the end, I could see a bit more of where she was coming from. I could sympathize more with her motivations and such. But that still sticks with me. It shows that she is flawed, that she isn't, and that she is, a very that she has doubts and failings that I suppose any person could have. Um, I'm not sure she wholly made up for that by the end, but that's neither here nor there. Um, a
Didn't
bigger.
she
Oh, go
shoot
ahead.
somebody during the show too? Am I wrong on that? Like,
I'm trying
didn't the
to.
suit like shoot someone?
He,
Am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong on
I
that. I don't
think
know. I thought she killed somebody, or maybe the suit killed somebody, or Natalie killed somebody for her using the suit.
maybe I don't quite
Uh,
remember.
I could be wrong.
I would call it some close calls, especially flipping that
Yeah,
truck. There's a very good
that
possibility Slug wasn't going to walk away from that, but they
that's
made
a
a
really
point to
good.
show.
Yeah. Also, that scene entirely stolen from Hellboy. That didn't sit well with me
Oh,
either.
well,
The red means stop, and he hits the
excellent
and,
call.
yeah. So that kind of bugged me, which I'd forgotten about until you brought it up. So thank you.
The
But
middle
the big
finger was an addition, though.
that's true. That's true. He didn't flip off the truck driver, Hellboy. That is. But I think the biggest like sticking point for me for this show is something that happens in the first episode that means the rest of the show should never have happened. So when Riri gets expelled from MIT, and it is MIT, we've established it is
Hmm.
our MIT, the one we know.
Yep.
Uh, she's packing up her stuff, and someone says, "Make sure she doesn't take any school property or whatever." And someone else in like a throwaway line says, "She built that herself. That's hers." No,
No.
factually untrue. MIT, if you are a student of MIT using the school's resources, their facilities, their equipment,
Yeah.
anything a student makes belongs to the school. It's not a long Google search to find that. So
Oh, this was your Google comment?
yes, yeah, like 5 seconds of Googling, sure, they couldn't have physically stopped her from like walking away in a super powered suit, but the cops would have been at her fucking house the next day,
Yeah.
and basically with legal rights to reclaim what she stole.
Hmm. And I would say not
So
just legal rights, an ethical responsibility to like, you walked away
right,
with our power suit and we
yeah,
need it back.
yeah.
Well,
This thing is
she
this.
did have a suit in Black Panther 2, though. So did she take her own suit to MIT?
The Wakandans didn't let her take that.
Oh,
No,
they shouldn't take that one? Okay.
yeah, so she built this using MIT's resources. They are sure they deactivated the built-in AI and
Yeah.
whatnot, but
I love
they
that
would
this is
have
your sticking point of the show.
if you're gonna if they had based this in like Marvel Institute of Technology instead of Massachusetts Institute of
Yeah.
Technology, sure, whatever, rules are fine, whatever you want. But if you're basing it in a real place, you have to abide by that real place's real rules.
And actually that brings up another thing that I kind of forgot about towards the
Mhm.
second half of the show, which is you have one person who's associated with one of these suits, so
Mhm.
and go like disappears from IT, like goes back, disappears from MIT, goes back to Chicago, and then you have a suit flying around Chicago, like no one, no authorities,
Right.
no version of Shield or something shows up and be like, Riri, what are you up to?
Exactly.
It's a
So
very small audience that might be doing that in Chicago.
I don't
right.
believe Justin never used his computer laptop for anything ever.
Nothing that I looked to like monetize or sell
Okay.
on my own or like
Uh,
say yeah.
Not to interject on you again here, but this is interesting. According to a Google search, a 5-second Google search, she did not kill anybody like I thought for some reason she had.
Okay.
And according to Google's AI overview result that comes up at the top, it is strongly hinted at that it is actually the AI Natalie that chooses to leave John to die, not Riri.
Oh, it's a
Hmm.
little bit darker.
That is also
So
yeah.
how's that? So the AI is telling me that it was the AI that was the murderer. So you can
Well,
interpret that however you want,
but
but
Riri
I
didn't put up a fight about it. Never asked
that's
he
Natalie
was in
like,
a
true.
"Why'd you
bad
leave
spot
from
at
the
the
tower?"
moment.
She wasn't like, no, we can pull him out of there. Yeah, she didn't object. So she's complicit. She's an accomplice, if
I
nothing
mean,
else.
Yeah, she felt bad, but she
I think she
didn't.
was barely conscious, wasn't she? She like
Yeah,
just
that's a good
a
point.
good fight
Yeah.
happened to her. Remember, we're saying she's a small little
Okay,
fighter.
that's true. That's true. But I don't know. But like I said, the real world MIT lack of any sort of pursual of their property. That's what
Yeah,
that's what bothers me more.
yeah. Well,
What if
That's
what
what
if
if.
the AI did decide to do that, but then there's the ethical debate of she created the AI, even if it was by accident, so is she still responsible for the death of John? Or was
Oh.
the AI placed there by Mephisto, in which case she had no control over it to begin with, and Mephisto chose to let John die? Anyway, keep going, sorry.
There are
Okay.
philosophical arguments for this for days.
Yeah.
Great.
So that brings me to the other half of the equation because there is a lot of depth to the show that I was not expecting after those first couple of episodes. Um, and just the fact that there is that level of depth, those amount of layers that you can mull over and consider and debate, that makes it stronger than a lot of Marvel shows I've seen lately, or movies, or what have you. Um, Also, I heading into this, I expected her to be just kind of like, oh, okay, this is the new Iron Man and whatnot. But adding magic into the mix and all the complications that I'm sure could arise from magic and technology mixing, that's interesting. So I was happy to see that they did more than just like she's built her own suit, she's taking up the mantle, that kind of thing. Um, so there are a number of things Ironheart does right. They are counterbalanced by a number of things that it does wrong, and where it falls in the middle is it's tricky, especially considering what Dan said that there's a good chance this isn't going to get followed up on, so we have an incomplete story. And the parts I liked, I really enjoyed. So I'm going to skew higher than lower on this. I'm going to say I liked two-thirds of the show, minus those first two episodes for the most part. That's that's 2 out of 3, roughly 6.6. I'm going to round down because of some of the issues I had with it. 6.5.
6.5. Yeah, this is definitely a show that could be, I don't know, a wide range, I feel like. Again, I say that a lot
Mm-hmm.
of these Marvel ones, but it's true. It's true. 6.5. Okay, so what we got here then? 6.5, 27 divided by 3, 7.23 for our average tonight, which is still pretty good. Definitely worth a watch. It sounds like you
Mm-hmm.
can make up your mind on some of this stuff yourself as you give Ironheart a try. Before we head out today, just briefly here, wanted to recap, I think the last four things. If I missed anything for 2025 calendar year, Dan could probably correct me on this, I'm sure. But we have just as a few weeks here off. I just bought my tickets today. Fantastic Four First Steps coming out in July. About what, 2.5 weeks here, give or take, 3 weeks. And then we're getting a little variety here. So we got one more movie, which is Fantastic Four, First Steps. We have two, kind of unusual here, two animated series left this year. Starting in late August, we have Eyes of Wakanda, which the last, at least for me on my Disney Plus, the last two episodes I watched had previews for that beforehand.
Yep.
Also by Ryan Coogler, which I'm kind of excited about. It's only 4 episodes, but apparently we'll go as far back as like the 1200s in the
Yep.
MCU to show what Wakanda was up to at the time. So that's kind of interesting. And then Halloween, get Marvel Zombies, four
Ah,
episodes. I haven't heard recently. Originally, this was supposed to be a rated R cartoon. I don't know if
Yeah.
they're going to stick with that
ooh,
still. Dan, you know that?
That's I haven't heard any change, and
Okay.
until after watching that Predator, Killer of Killers cartoon, like, hey, they could do a lot of pretty violent stuff.
Oh,
So
really?
I'm
Okay.
sure they're not going to go crazy, but they're not going to shy away from the gore in Marvel
okay.
Zombies, I'm sure.
It's going to be just like a regular TV-14 cartoon, except one tastefully done topless shot of Happy Hogan at some point in the
Wow.
show. So
And a
there's
couple of
that.
F-bombs.
Yes, maybe a couple of F-bombs. And then we'll end our year here with Wonder Man, one more TV show for the year.
Oh,
Justin's
yeah.
favorite superhero character, Wonder Man, you know, because he has the big W on his chest. So Wonder Man, which remind me on this one, this is not a procedural one, is it?
No, the summary is that it's like an actor who's acting as a superhero and then becomes a superhero. Is the short summary.
Oh, okay. Anything else?
Nope, that is the Marvel gamut. There's obviously stuff coming the following year, but that is
Sure.
2025.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent. So looking forward to that. We'll see how that stuff pans out. I'm sure we'll get a review or two in there on some of that stuff as we go through. And that is going to do us for tonight. If you have been listening to us, we just started our top 100 songs of the 80s countdown for summer. Episode 1 had songs 100 through 81 in the last episode, and the episode that will follow this episode will have music songs 81 through 60. No,
No,
yes.
80 through 61.
80 through 61. Numbers are hard, working backwards. Yes, and we'll keep counting down as the summer keeps going. So check those out. You even get a little rare music episode cameo by Justin in those. So definitely
Yeah,
want to stop by and check those out.
further proof the world is ending.
Further proof. There we go. Anything else on your end, guys?
Oh, I wanted
Yeah.
to scold Marvel
Oh,
for throwing in Alanis Morissette, "You Ought to Know," but blanking out the F-bomb. I listened to like 3 minutes of credits to see if they would do it, and they did not.
Mm.
I did enjoy that Alonso was in there. That's fun. She is God, so not in this universe technically yet, but we've added some other things now, right? Star Trek and Star Wars are both part of the MCU now,
Yep.
and some other things also. So there we go.
All
Okay,
right.
I think that will do us up here at Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. It's the Fawn Pod. That's been Justin. That's been Dan. That's been me, Cody, up at the top there. And take care, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Take care.
It's easy.